Hello. Welcome. Good evening to everybody out there. I hope that you can hear and see me okay. My name is Andy Wright, and welcome to this session, Learn English the Way That You Like, hosted by us at the British Council in Poland. Before I tell you a little bit about what you can expect in this session this evening, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. As I say, my name is Andy Wright. I am currently the head of adult courses at British Council in Poland. That basically means I am responsible for making sure that if you're an adult student, that means anyone older than 18, my responsibility is your education, basically. I'm in charge of the courses. I make sure that the quality of teaching is up to standard. So if you have any questions, if you have any issues about the course, feel free to get in touch with me. A little bit about my past. I've been teaching, I've been involved in teaching English for about 18 years, which is quite a long time. I have several qualifications, and I've been lucky enough to be able to work not just in Poland, but also in Kuwait, in Sri Lanka, and in South Korea. So I've been very lucky in where this job has taken me around the world. But you're not here to hear my biography. You're here to learn about learning English, and so that's what we're going to look at this evening. Okay, so in this session, I'm going to be addressing these 3 points. First of all, why are you here? This is the first main question that I always ask people when I get to know them, when they come into my classroom, when I meet them for the first time. I think this is essential, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about why that's important in a bit. We're going to look at what it means to learn a language, because it's not just about the nuts and bolts. It's a very large question. I'm not sure if you have enough time for me to answer it in a great deal of detail, but I'll try to give you a sort of an overview of that. And then once you've got those things in mind, we're going to look at what that means for you. So what you can do in your day-to-day lives to improve your language skills. And of course, I'm talking about English, but you might find some of these things will apply just as much to other foreign languages. I mean, I'm going to be sort of talking a bit about my experience in learning Polish to hopefully illustrate some of those points that I'll be making there. This should take about 30 minutes. Hopefully I'll be able to get through all of those things in enough time to get to some of your questions as well. If you have any questions, feel free to write them down. I will be addressing them towards the end of the session this evening. So I look forward to hearing from some of the things that you have to ask later on. Okay, so first of all, why are you here? I've called it the first question. It could also be perhaps the most important question that you might be asked by your teacher. So first of all, it's very important for you to set your goal. And setting a goal, I think, is very important because it gives you a certain degree of momentum behind your learning. And that goal, it can really be anything. You know, I meet people that come to classes and maybe they have a fairly grand, ambitious goal. That could be passing an exam. It could be one of the Cambridge exams. It could be an IELTS exam, something like this. And oftentimes the people are looking to pass these exams because they have a specific goal in mind. You know, I'm always very always very grateful that I'm able to help people along this path. You know, helping somebody to get to that qualification that they need to live in another country, to get a promotion. So getting those language skills, this is a very, very important part of achieving that end goal. So knowing not only what exam you're looking for, but the grade that you're interested in, I think that's very important. So if you can come into the first lesson with that in mind, that's going to help you know kind of how far you have to go. And it's also going to help your teacher know kind of what they need to do to take you in that direction. And it's not just exams that people come in as a goal. It could just be something as simple as, I want to understand and participate in meetings at work more. It could be, I want to help my kids with their homework. It could be, I want to go and travel in various different countries. It could be, I've got a girlfriend that comes from the UK and I want to be able to communicate better with her. You know, every single person has a slightly different goal. Your goal is going to be completely unique to you, and that's perfectly okay. But what you need to do is have that in mind when you go to your lessons or when you want to learn that English, because not only is it going to give you an idea about how far that journey is going to be, it gives you that sense of purpose as well. You know, it can be very difficult. It can be very challenging when you're learning a language. I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges that you might face, and just bearing in mind why you started and what your end goal is. It's going to give you that, you know, constant sense of movement and progress, and, you know, this is where I need to be. So setting a goal is very important. Now, can you break that into smaller chunks? We talked about, perhaps for an example, an exam. So an exam, there's 4 clear chunks that you can break that into: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. So maybe within this larger goal, there's something smaller in there that you can really sort of hone in and focus on. And this is essential, because when you're setting a goal, sometimes that goal can seem really big, you know, very, very hard to swallow. It's a bit like trying, is an old joke, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, yes? So even if you've got this grand, huge vision of where you want to go with this education, you know, if you can break that down, each small chunk that you eat, each little morsel of that elephant you consume, you know, before you know it, you've eaten half an elephant. You know, the next half might not seem quite so difficult. So once you've managed to consume some of that elephant, you realize how achievable that goal is. You know, I do this in my work. Maybe you do this as part of your jobs as well. You look at a big project, something that, you know, when you look at this end goal, it's going to feel like, how am I going to do that? Well, break it down into chunks. Now, you might think, well, I'm not quite sure how to do that, Andy. You know, I want to pass this exam, but I just have no idea. Maybe I need to improve my grammar. Maybe I need to improve my vocabulary. I don't really know. So I would suggest something that you can do, and again, this is going to be one of the suggestions that I make, is, you know, seeking advice. You know, it's very difficult sometimes to see, you know, how can I divide this enormous elephant into tiny, easily digestible pieces? Well, you know, sometimes you just need to find a person with, you know, the tools to help you to break that up. Someone with a chainsaw, perhaps. And, you know, they exist. And I would say us at the British Council would be a very good source of expert advice. Yes. Think about how realistic this is as well. You know, I often meet people and they come to me and they want to take an IELTS exam. I'm going to use exams as an example here, but I mean, you can substitute this as any kind of goal. Yes. They want to take an exam, and maybe they have 1 year in which to complete this objective. Yes. So this is, you know, fairly sensible. We've got their endpoint. We can break this up into little chunks, and we can see, okay, so in the first period, maybe you want to see, you know, how close you are to be able to succeed in this exam. And then we can see, you know, what bits of language do you need to work on? What bits of writing do you need to work on? And that's fairly realistic. It's fairly achievable. On the other hand, I have somebody coming to me perhaps and they're like, well, Andy, I have a really important job interview tomorrow. I need to improve all of my grammar. I need to get better at asking and answering questions. Well, that doesn't seem very realistic to me. It's too short a period. We can't really break that down. We can't really work on a lot of the things that you need to work on. So being realistic in terms of getting to your goal, I think, is really important. Sometimes, you know, people come to me and we have this consultation, and it can feel like sometimes I'm breaking bad news to people. And I do feel a bit bad about this, because I know if somebody wants to pass that exam or go traveling or get a job in a foreign country, I know how important these dreams are to people. So sometimes by telling them, I'm sorry, you have to delay this by months or even a year, that can feel like you're tearing their dreams away. But actually, I'm doing them a favor, because the amount of time that they might waste, not quite getting to that point where they can achieve it. This is why we have to have these serious conversations right at the start of this journey. Okay. And again, if you're not sure how to break this into a realistic sort of chunk or a realistic time frame, speak to an expert, because we've seen so many people coming through those doors. We've helped so many people get to where they need to be. We can use this experience to help guide you to where you want to go. Okay, so time frame. That's very much part of the realistic nature of setting the goal and getting to it. So what sort of suggestions, what advice would I make? So first of all, don't be afraid to ask for help. Seek expert feedback, input. You're never alone when it comes to this, goal setting. So many people have come before you. So many people come after you. There's no embarrassment in trying to even ask, how do I get to this point? Whatever the goal, we're like doctors. We've seen everything. We've heard everything. There's nothing that you can't do to shock us. Don't be afraid to take risks. And on the other hand, when I'm talking about realistic plans, sometimes I meet people and, they're kind of happy to stay where they are. And although they have a certain idea about where they need to be, they're okay where they are. And I often like to challenge them and say, look, you've been, let's say, upper intermediate for a year now. Why not make that step up to advanced? Why not, try something a little bit out of your comfort zone? If you do that, then who knows, maybe you'll achieve something that goes beyond even what your initial ideas, your initial goals were. You can exceed that. And again, that's going to come from feedback from experts. That's going to come from people who can see something inside you, who can pull that out from you. Sometimes that can be quite difficult to do just by yourself. I'm not saying that it's impossible. I see a lot of very good self-studying people, but I think sometimes, somebody who can give you a little kick on your destination towards your end goal, that can certainly help. The next thing I would suggest, don't be afraid of failure. And by failure, that doesn't necessarily mean, failing an exam or failing your interview or something like this, something big. I can see people in lessons where they've maybe learned a word or a phrase and they want to give it a try, but they're not sure. Maybe they'll make a mistake. Maybe they'll say it wrong. No, they won't do it because maybe something will go wrong. That's the opposite kind of attitude that you need to take. You need to grasp those opportunities for failure with both hands, because learning doesn't come if everything goes well. We have to face adversity. We have to take the setbacks and the knocks, and these are the things that we learn from, because without those things, we're never going to make progress. Yes, it's going to mean sometimes you're going to get, a few mistakes will be made. You're going to get some feedback which might not necessarily be what you want to hear, but that's why we're here, isn't it? And if you do these things in the classroom, then when it comes to real life, well, you'll be much better prepared for those things. So I always try to encourage everybody in my classroom, this is the time and the place to be trying out new things and for making those mistakes. And if you can be brave enough to do that in the classroom, then you'll be brave enough to do that in real life. And I'll tell you what, if you pay close attention to me this evening as I'm speaking, you will notice I'm going to make some mistakes. I'm going to fluff some lines. I'm going to say some things which don't necessarily make any sense. There's one right there. But you know what? I have the confidence to keep going. And if you go to classes, if you have that sort of attitude, the person that you're speaking to, they won't notice either. They won't care, because you'll just keep going. And that's what learning is all about. Okay. And the final thing, don't be afraid of changing your plan. As I said, you might take some risks, and you might notice that you can go beyond where you needed to be. This plan that you had, maybe you can get even further than that. But on the other hand, at the same time, learning isn't a steady, straight line in terms of progress. Sometimes people's progress does plateau, does level off. That's part of the process. Sometimes you might need to add a few more weeks, add a few more months to your time limit. And that's perfectly okay. That doesn't mean that you've failed or that your plan is unachievable. Just means maybe you need a little bit more help here. Maybe you need to do a little bit more stuff there. And again, that change of plan, that's perfectly fine. And that's something that you can absolutely do with somebody, with some expert help and guidance and advice. And that's something that we offer here at the British Council. As you go through your course, with a My Class course, for example, you have an opportunity to meet a teacher, somebody like me, someone with that experience. And as you go through your course, you can come to us, you can ask us questions, we can look at where your goals are, we can look at your achievements so far, and we can talk about how achievable is your goal. Do we need to change anything? Do we need to break one small part of that elephant into an even smaller part? Maybe you can't eat the entire trunk in one go. Perhaps we need to divide that up into smaller segments. That's what we do. And through these conversations, we can help guide students towards that end goal that they need to get to. Okay, so that's the first key question. And now I want to look a little bit at what it means to learn a language. Okay, to help me do this, we're going to go to the next page. My seems to have frozen. There we are. So I'm going to give you a couple of tasks to do. So have a look at these two typical grammar questions. I'll give you a few seconds. Can you fill in the gaps with the first one and cross out or deselect the wrong ones in the second one? Just have a look at that. I'll give you 30 seconds. Okay, I'm going to assume that you've got some answers there. I'm going to show you the answers now. So the first one, yesterday I saw my friend. I haven't seen her since 2019. And the second one, next year I'll go to the USA for a holiday. She was a holiday, I suppose. Last year I went to France and I had a really good time. So you probably know, first one, we're looking at past simple and present perfect. Second one, we're looking at articles. But the question is, if you got these right, does that mean you know these tenses? Does it mean that you know articles? Is this knowing a language? Hopefully, you've said no. Because what it means to learn a language goes beyond, mere grammar activities. I mean, I know grammar is very, very important to a lot of people when they come to a language class. I think you can all agree that grammar and vocabulary, these are the building blocks of the language. These are the kind of the basics, the foundations upon which we build our ability to use it. But that's not necessarily the be all and end all. I put a few kind of like verses up on the screen. So knowledge versus use, understanding versus production, accuracy, fluency, internal, external. These are all the sort of tensions that a student like yourself needs to sort of get to grips with as you're learning a language. You've got the sort of internal mechanics of the language where you're, trying to work on your knowledge of grammar. How do you sequence a sentence? How do you know which form of the verb to choose? And this is quite important. But then on the other hand, there's the use of the language. And this goes beyond being able to do the sorts of tasks that we saw before and being able to produce language in a meaningful and in a fluent way that for the other person, it's easy for them to understand. Because at the end of the day, we learn a language to communicate. You know, we don't learn a language. Well, actually, you know, some people do learn a language to do the grammar test to pass an exam. But I would say that most exams now, well, all good exams anyway, they would have a focus on the use of language. So let's take the Cambridge exam. Yes, you do need to show, you know, accuracy in a range of language. But even more, you know, more importantly is your ability to use it, to say it, to write it, to understand it. And that's not just, you know, you're not going to get points just for filling in gap fill exercises. You need to be able to produce it. Now, how to best do that, we're going to look at sort of some of the things that you can do in a second. But just to sort of drill home what the British Council's ethos is when it comes to learning a language, for us, it's all about production. It's about taking your knowledge and applying it. So our lessons, you're going to get your grammar, you're going to get your vocabulary, but the vast majority of the lesson is about using it, producing it, understanding it. And this is how you are going to learn it. This is how you're going to use it. You know, there's no real world application where you have to go to a foreign country and you communicate by filling in, you know, gap fills. You need to be there, you know, be able to produce it, you know, at that point, you know, minute by minute, second by second. You might not have time to really process what it is you're about to say. It needs to be a reflex. So by coming to a classroom where you practice production, where you practice the use, you know, that, you know, throwing yourself into the deep end, taking the risks that I talked about earlier, you know, that's going to set you up such that when you do need to use English for whatever it is you need to use it for, you're in a much better position to do so. You know, this is going to mean that you will need to use it. This is going to mean you can't just sit in the corner and hide. You will need to speak to your partner. You'll need to speak in groups. You need to speak in lots of different ways with lots of different people to practice that experience of talking to strangers for the first time in a foreign language. Yes, it's scary, but you know, that's what you come, you know, that's what we need to be able to do at the end of the day. Okay, so learning a language is more about producing and using this internal knowledge and being able to externalize it. Okay, so hopefully you're with me so far. Hopefully I've persuaded you that I know I've gone too far. Wow. Hopefully I've persuaded you that, you know, you need to do these things to get to a point where you can use languages. So what can you do to be better at using a language, to be better at learning a language? So my first point here is active learning. Now, one of the things that a lot of people do is they will watch Netflix, and I'm pointing over there because my television's over there. They will watch Netflix, they will put subtitles on, and maybe that's about it. Maybe they'll draw the line there. That's not going to do much, I'm afraid. Bad news if you think that's how you're going to learn language. There's nowhere that you're absorbing that vocabulary or whatever it is you're trying to do. Now, some people go the next step and they'll be watching Netflix and maybe they've got a bit of paper and they'll write down some of the words on their paper. It's better, right? Because they're actively involved, they're watching and they're writing stuff down. It's better. It's not perfect. I mean, my question there is what happens then to that list of words? You know, you've obviously selected them for a reason. So what are you going to do with them now? You know, what I did when I was learning Polish is I would just leave that bit of paper on the table And that would be about it. I would not come back to it. And believe it or not, I would not remember any of those words ever again. So what can you do? So maybe what you can do, maybe you could come back to it, the next day and no, I know this word. Yeah, blah, 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 I can remember this word. Put the paper down, probably forgotten again. What you need to do is you need to keep actively coming back. You need to try to use that language as often as you can as well. I often recommend websites such as Quizlet, where you can create an account, you can type in the vocabulary that you want to remember, and then you can use the app to play some games or activities where you're constantly reminding yourselves of these vocabulary, of these words or phrases or whatever. Something that I would always recommend is try to use these as early and as often as you can. If you've got some new words, next time you go to a lesson, next time you're in a meeting and using English, next time you meet your friends, give yourself a challenge. Try to use at least 5 of those words. Doesn't really matter if you use them correctly. Doesn't really matter if you use them appropriately. But what's important is that you are using them. That's what we mean by active learning. It can't just be sitting there and hoping that you absorb it, or just writing it down and hoping that it will come into your brain. No, you need to keep coming back to it again and again. The more you use it, the easier it will be accessible in your mind. Try thinking about using different senses. And I've got senses and imagination. I'm going to sort of combine those two together. Because often you can, if you're trying to learn a word or a phrase or something, if you're just looking at it, it can be quite difficult to sort of make connections or to remember these words later on. I had this problem when I was learning Polish. And one thing that I did was I tried to make a visual connection between these words in an imaginative way. So I'll just tell you what the visual representation is. You try to guess. I mean, you've got to get inside my head here, so this is a bit difficult. Try to guess what the Polish word is. Okay, so this visual representation is a man, a singer from the 1950s and 60s, an American singer. And you can imagine he's singing a song with a hat and a trench coat, pockets full of money. Yes. It's a difficult one, this one. The singer's name is Humphrey Bogart. And the word, because remember, he's got a lot of money, he's very rich, is bogaty. Yes, rich. I think that's how you say it anyway. Apologies if my pronunciation sucks. So Humphrey Bogart, rich man, bogaty, rich man. That's how I saw it. Another one, I'll give you another one and then I'll move on. So this is another singer, a female singer, South American, but portrayed by Madonna in a movie, singing on a train platform. The singer's name is Eva Peron. The word is peron. So train platform, I believe is the word. Yes. So again, this is a technique that I use to try to remember some of the vocabulary, and it sticks. It really works. So if you're struggling, try to connect these words or these phrases with other things. The stupider, the better. The more personal, the better. Okay. So this is something that I often suggest. And if it's really silly, if it's really funny, that means it's a lot more memorable. So it's more likely to work for you. Okay. Again, I've got seek expert advice. I keep coming back to this, but I mean, ultimately, if you're sick, you'll see a doctor. If you want to build a house, you'll see an architect. If you want to learn a language, you've got to seek an expert, right? And I keep coming back to it, but at the British Council, we've got experts ready. At the moment, we've got our course consultation. So this is a perfect opportunity for you to make an appointment, come and see our consultants. It might even be me if you're lucky enough. And you can ask us these questions. You can ask us about your goals. We can give you some help. We can give you some guidance. We'll suggest some courses that we think will be a good fit for you. And it could be a face-to-face course. It could be these are the sorts of courses that we're running in Poland. It could be an only online course, if that's what you need. So we have a course that runs, and this is an international online only course called English Online. So, regardless of what you need, we'd like to think that we have a course for you. I mean, I'm always honest with students, and sometimes I do have to disappoint people and say, there is nothing that, that will fit, but I'll give you some advice and I'll give you some help to get to that end point. But 9 times out of 10, I'm sure we'll find something good for you. And of course, the last one, language only works with other people. It's all very well and good, having these lists of words and trying to use them in isolation. But if you're not using them with other people, it's hard to see how you're going to be using them in general. Language is about interaction. It's about working and talking to other people. You've got to be in a classroom. You've got to be, at least communicating with at least one other person. Otherwise, you're not going to be working on your fluency. You're not going to be developing your ability to take your knowledge and put it into an external kind of package. So go through lessons. You can do this with friends. You can do this with family. I'm often asked, is it better to be in a class or in a one-to-one with a one-to-one tutor? I would say, again, 9 times out of 10, the class is a much better fit because you're going to be talking with other students. You're going to be able to talk about the language a lot better. You're going to be able to share your experiences with learning a lot more. The teacher is still going to be there on hand to give you feedback, to correct your mistakes and to give you input and to help you, to guide you in your direction. But you need to be working with other people. And if you can work in a class, then I'd say that's usually a much, much better fit. Not always. Sometimes one-to-one tuition is better in certain contexts, but I'd say most people, most of the audience here today, in a class, that's going to be the right fit for you. Okay, so I think I've gone slightly over my allotted time, but I'd like to thank you very much for your attention. I'll come to your questions in a moment. If you are interested, there's another mistake for you. If you're interested in registering for a course with us, you can follow this link, book a consultation and do the online level check. And as I said, we'll be more than happy to help you, help to talk to you about your goals and what we can do to help you to get to those goals. We've got courses where we can help you with your exam preparation. If you're interested in developing your general English skills, we've got courses just like that as well. So get in touch with us. We've got consultations running for adults all the time. So even if you're not sure today, maybe in say October or in 2 months' time, maybe you're thinking, well, I don't. Actually, I remember what Andy was saying, and I'd quite like to get some advice. I'd quite like to get some help with my learning. Our courses are always recruiting. Come to us whenever, and we can sort you out. Okay, and don't forget to take part in our competition, which the details of which I hope are on the website, because I can't remember the top of my head. Okay, so I'm going to switch to the other view and see if I can find your questions. Here we are. Oh my goodness, there are a lot of questions. Hopefully I can get through all of them in enough time. If I don't get to respond to all of your questions, I apologize. But yeah, you can always send me an email, I suppose. So first question is from Anya. How will my class be organized this year, online or in schools? So I know I'm talking to people across the country. So I'm going to speak quite broadly. Different cities will have slightly different approaches. By and large, my class is a face-to-face product. So in Warsaw, something like 75% of the classes will be face-to-face. It'll be slightly less in the other cities. There will be some online lessons, but those will be slightly more restricted. So it's a bit of a hybrid as we start this year. And we will see how things progress. Obviously, things hopefully will start to open up and we'll return to normality a little bit. But my class is primarily face-to-face. If you're interested in an only online course, this is the product which we call English Online, and this is much better designed for people who are only interested in online courses. So I hope that's answered your question, Anya. Mainly face-to-face, some online. English Online is your online component. Gabby asks, are there any examinations for adults that evaluate only speaking? I don't believe there are. What you can do, if you take the IELTS exam, they will give you in your grade, they'll break it down. And I believe the Cambridge exam does this as well. So you'll get a separate grade for each part, and then you get the overall grade. So you can go to the IELTS exam, for instance, and they might give you a 7.5 or a 6 for your speaking. I believe you still should take the other parts. Of course, you pay for it, so you might as well. So you can get a sense of how good your speaking is. But I don't think there are any formal exams that only focus on speaking, I'm afraid, Gabby. Anya, I don't know if this is the same or a different Anya as before. She asks, have we got courses connected only with speaking? Not necessarily. English Online, their lessons, the lessons themselves, they last about 50 minutes. The majority of that lesson is comprised of speaking and communicating with the rest of the group. A little bit of language. The majority of the language component is kind of homework. Most of the lesson is focusing on speaking. With my class lessons, these are 90 minutes long. And again, communication is emphasized in the lesson. You might get a bit of input, so a bit of reading, a bit of writing, a bit of reading. But again, the vast majority of the lesson is going to be speaking. So of that 90 minutes, I'd say 45 minutes to an hour should be, communicative, where you're either working in a group or with a partner, something like this. So even though not only speaking, the majority of the lesson, you should be doing a lot of speaking. With my class, we have additional clubs. So these are free sessions that you can sign into. Here we have conversation clubs where these are 60 minutes long and you can go, and that's just for speaking. So the lessons themselves, because you want to have something concrete that you've learned, there's going to be some learning component. Lots of speaking, communication, conversation classes. Those are free, part of my class. Those are just speaking. Another question from another Anya. Again, could be the same Anya, could be 3 different Anyas. I'm in the dark here. She asks if she can prepare for CAE or IELTS online this year. Is it possible? I'm not sure exactly what the schedule is in terms of Cambridge exam, if we're running those classes online or not. We haven't finalized that. English Online now does have IELTS coach. So English Online does have some IELTS preparation as part of it, but no Cambridge exam stuff. That might come in the future, but I'm not sure. Nothing's planned for quite some time there. With my class, we have Cambridge exam as part of that. So that's embedded into the course itself. So that means you can have a combination of general English and Cambridge exam preparation. So I think most students find that quite useful, quite beneficial. You get your exam preparation and you get some lessons focusing on developing your language. IELTS is a separate course. There we go. IELTS is a separate course. And I'm not sure if we've planned any online courses yet. We may run some IELTS intensive courses. If we do, they will begin later in the year. I'm going to say November, December, that sort of time. let's see. Oh, Asha has put a. So she says CA is only available as face-to-face course now for adults. We have online secondary courses. So there you go. If you're a secondary student, so fifth, I think that's upper secondary, that would be 18 and below, 17 and below. We've got something for you, but for adults, it's online only. So there we go. I think those were the only questions. I think I managed to get through all of those. I guess this is your last chance. I'm being told I have to finish. Oh, no. So thank you very much for coming and putting up with me waffling on. I hope that you've gained something from this session. As I say, I'm speaking from the perspective as a British Council teacher, but obviously a lot of the things I've talked about this evening, you can go away and you can do independently. I can't stress enough, get advice. That's what we're here for. But I think that's it. I'll wrap up there. So thank you very much for coming along. It was very nice to virtually meet you. Don't forget to divide those elephants up into smaller, manageable chunks. And if you're interested, I will be doing a session on Monday to give people a taster session on my class. So hopefully I'll see some of you there. So that's it. I will leave it there. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Cheerio.